Another little video about martial arts here, but I do hope I'm not sort of looking like I'm trying to turn into some sort of pound shop Ramsey Dewey or something, whose channel I quite like. But you know, these updates on what I think of the martial arts, it's just something that comes to mind. But ages ago, about 3 or 4 years ago, I posted a comment on another one of these martial arts bigwigs, so to speak, Sensei Seth. And at the time he'd done a video on, are you at McDojo? Like the telltale signs you're at McDojo. There was a spate of such videos, again from like the likes of Ramsey Dewey and Sensei Seths and others, themes as it were. And they had all the usual ones, like I always say, like the 8-year-old black belts, and they teach you the flying chi balls of death and all this sort of stuff. But one thing I thought that had been missed out, which was the one experience I've had of going to McDojo, was these sort of almost comically over strict teachers. Like I say, I went to one once. The usual dojo I went to, this was when I was in England, living in London, and my car was in the garage, so I couldn't get to my usual dojo. It was too much of a hassle by public transport. Anyway, there's a sports centre near me, and it had a poster up, and straight away it just screamed McDojo. I remember it was these two people shaping up against each other on a beach, and it said like, a dream to some, a nightmare to others. And the name, I wish I could remember it. It was beautiful. They'd crammed in Chinese, Korean and Japanese into the title of this so-called martial art. It was fantastic, but I can't remember what it was, but it was brilliant. But you know, I was bored training by myself, so I went along, and straight away there was no such thing as a trial lesson. You paid straight away, and it was too much money. And yeah, the teacher was like, it was like, you know, the old Karate Kid, the movies at the Cobra Kai. Like the head of that team was like, you know, in this dojo we train to kill, or something. Like, it was hysterical. I just couldn't take it. I only went once, and it was rubbish. And that was that. But I do remember the teacher. But beneath all the sort of posturing, I sort of thought the bloke looked a bit scared, because I mean, I don't know if I've heard this is a common thing in McDojos, like the overly strict teachers, but I think, you know, they are worried they're going to get found out, as it were, because they're teaching nonsense. So I wrote that anyway on the Sensei Seth video, and I still get replies to it now, 3-4 years on, like I say. And one comment said, well, I found that very strict teachers in proper martial arts, which, yeah, absolutely true. And again, that's been my experience over the years, over the decades now. And I thought, you know, what is the perfect teacher? Is it necessary to be super strict? And I always say a common thing of mine is, you know, most dojos, you couldn't train. I said this in the last video, you couldn't train as they trained, say, in the 70s. Most dojos would be shut down. But I should have said, this was in the last video I made. It was kind of, I was going from my experience being in England. I mean, certainly if you went to like a Kyokushin karate class in, say, Poland, because I trained with some Polish guys that come to England. And living in London, it's kind of multicultural, even more so now apparently. But they were super tough, and they trained really hard, and it kind of showed up the dojo where I was at, because it was more like a sports karate thing, so something I said in the last video. They were absolutely streaks Ed, and the training for them was just like, it's so easy. So I was kind of more speaking of England. I can only talk about my experience. Where was I going with this? Yeah, so you couldn't train super hard, say, in England, in most places. I'm talking about the sort of the more popular high street dojos type, not the McDojos, but high street dojos. But I've had many experiences of different teachers, going right back to when I was a kid starting judo at 6. The great Mr. Glass, who's, I believe, still with us, and he was a great teacher and a professional judo champion. This was in the 80s. But going to judo, the strictest teacher I had, like, and in my view, completely unnecessarily, completely over the top. Again, it was many years later in judo, and I went to this class, and it was a great class. So watching a fire at the moment. And thankfully, the head teacher, most of the time, he delegated the training to his senior student, or Senpai Lloyd, who was a great bloke, massive bloke, and he trained you properly. But you just had a bit of a laugh, not too much because you're training, but he was a sort of, anyway, sort of say, you know, right, training's over, who's up for a beer type thing. And it was a good atmosphere. And then sometimes their teacher would come on, take a class, and this guy, man, he just, you shut up. Like if he's trying to explain something, you hadn't realised, it's quite a big hall, so you might still be training the last move, and then he stopped the class, show you the next thing. And a couple of people maybe hadn't realised you at the back of the hall, and he'd like, shout across the hall, shut up, like this. And he was just a miserable son of a, really just, even just his picture, like on the website, just pulling the most, basically, I'm hard expression. I don't understand people like that in life. I'll say men, because that sort of character, primarily it's been men I've experienced have it. The sort of life's hard and so am I routine, everyone gets it, mate, You don't have to be that way. So I just found that just really over the top. And I contrast it with when I did some kickboxing. The teacher there, Nop, was two Thai guys, Thai kickboxing, so two Thai guys, strangely enough. And one I remember, I think it might have been father and son, but the younger guy was called Nop. And he was just incredible. He could do that thing where they jump up in the air and land in the splits and stuff. And he was teaching a roundhouse kick, or showing a roundhouse kick. And he said, I'm not taking the mick, this is how he spoke. He's, with this kick, you break many rib. Like that. And one of the guys there said, Master Nop, have you done this kick for real? And he was like, oh yeah, many time. And it turned out he'd been in prison in Thailand, and he'd done Thai boxing in prison, like so, like something out of blood sport or something. And but he was just, the point being, he was like, he'd see you turn up, and it was actually at the same sports centre where the McDojo was at. This was the kickboxing was some years before, like 10 years before, kickboxing class on a Sunday evening. And he'd be like, hello, how are you? Hello, nice to see you, like that. And he had a girlfriend who'd take the money. It was just a couple of quid as well. It wasn't, he was paying for the hall, but he wasn't making any money out of it, so to speak. So it's affordable. And he was just friendly, and his girlfriend was really nice. She'd take the money and like say hello, and she'd try to remember your name and this sort of thing. It was just a good atmosphere. And he trained really hard. I mean, he'd go aching, but he was just a nice guy. But there was no doubt of what he could do, so to speak. And that's kind of basically been my impression ever since of, apart from the judo bloke, who was the super strict bloke, he was very, very good, but just, anyway, completely unnecessary to be that way, as far as I'm concerned. But I think of other teachers I've had, and the ones that stick in my mind are, they were friendly and welcoming, but you knew full well that they were legit. The only other type I've had are ones that are a bit distant at first. The only thing I've been told a few times is I don't exactly seem overly enthusiastic myself on meeting people, so maybe I seem a bit cold. So a couple of times I thought, this guy's a bit off, but I've heard later they thought I was a bit off or whatever. But they've generally turned out to be cool once you get to know them and you show you're committed and stuff. And you get to know the person, see past the little foibles or whatever the word is. They're cool as well. So I suppose it's not a great mystery, to a good martial arts teacher, someone who knows what they can do. It's friendly, welcoming up to a point, but you'll kind of know instinctively if you muck about, you'll get your ass handed to you or just get drummed out of the class. But a couple of times when I've seen this, someone's turned up with an attitude, but the teachers managed to sort of turn it around for them. They've actually sort of quietened down and got stuck into their training, and without sounding like cliches, they've sort of become better people. They've sort of lost the edge, lost the attitude, because they realise it's not getting them anywhere, and they can just deal with whatever they're trying to deal with, or whatever's bugging them through their training. And so I don't know, psychology or something, like the teacher actually getting through to someone who's a bit troubled or something, and making them it's like I say, a better person. And I've seen that a few times, and it's a great thing. Yes, that's, a perfect martial arts teacher is someone who's friendly and welcoming, I guess, and it's very obvious what they can do, and they don't give out any attitude, and they can deal with attitude or without having to go overboard. It can be a fine line sometimes, but I don't know what to say in conclusion, but anyway, they're completely over the top. Cobra Kai bit is completely unnecessary, in my humble opinion.